Our guest today has spent a lot of time in the Canadian wilderness and not only has built one, but multiple log cabins with nothing but his hands and simple tools. He's hunted everything from moose to bear and has some incredible stories about encounters with wolves. Stay tuned for that. You're going to love it. I'd love to welcome to you guys Shawn James from the YouTube channel My Self Reliance, The Bush Stories. Hey, this is Ron from Stanley Wolf, and welcome to Bush Stories. Got a incredible guest with you guys. If you guys are in any way interested in homesteading, archery, outdoorsmanship, you've likely seen him on YouTube. He's got an incredible channel called My Self Reliance. Please welcome Shawn James to Bush Stories. Shawn, it's such a pleasure to have you.
Well, thanks for inviting me. Interested to have a discussion this morning.
I've been following your channel for quite some time. Obviously, you have documented a tremendous amount of your work, obviously with your cabins, and prior to that. And, there's just so much to take from all your content. You got just hundreds of hours worth of it. In your intros, you always show you're downtown Toronto. You obviously had a more of a city-oriented life. How did you get into this, and ultimately what was your history and how did you get into traditional archery? Because you have a lot of that featured in your videos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that city phase was pretty short, I would say, in my life, first of all. So I grew up in a small town in central Ontario, about an hour north of Toronto, born in Toronto, but then moved to this small town when I was a year old. But I think it was 30,000 people, I think, for most of the years that I was growing up there. And I did stay there for 25 years. But we were right on the edge of a rural, like at the north end of that town, on the edge of a rural township. So I would walk in there as a kid. Back then, you just did that. If you weren't playing street hockey on the end of the court or whatever, then I was back in the bush. And a lot of the time that was alone because people just were becoming less interested in spending time in the outdoors. When I was growing up in the 70s and 80s. So I would just wander back there and ended up like picking up sticks and making bows just out of anything I could find. And then when I was, I think it was 81 or 82, when I was 11 or 12, there was a bow making factory, an archery factory in the town that I grew up in. And I did some research recently. I was only there for a couple of years, I think, before they went out of business. And they were making fiberglass longbows, recurves, and crossbows.
You remember the name?
Yeah.
Remember the name of the place?
Yeah, it's Astro Deco.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I don't think they were around for very long. But anyway, I got this like clear white-ish longbow out of that garbage, and then went to the Army surplus place nearby and got a string for it. And back then, there was no arrows. Like, it was all like those little blue target arrows, a little crimped on point. So that's what I would just buy whenever I had some newspaper money, and go into the woods and shoot at ducks on the river that was nearby and anything in the woods and just stump shooting. I just had a lot of fun.
Nice.
So that was the start. And then I kind of got out of it. I was big into hockey and soccer as a teenager.
Yeah. That
took up a lot of my time. But when I wasn't doing that, I was wandering again through the woods and got my hunting license at 15. And I didn't really come from a hunting and fishing background. Like, my dad hunted when he was a kid back in Nova Scotia. So he did introduce me to it, but he's not a predator. He's not a real hunter. He just goes out it did go at the odd time. But they supported whatever I wanted to do. So I did get my license at 15. I went on a hunt with my dad.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Didn't see anything or anything. Like, it was like nothing newsworthy, but my parents ended up buying a couple of crossbows from that factory. So really rough, like just wood stock and a recurve 150-pound limb. So we would just shoot those in the basement and have fun with those. And then when I was 18, so I hadn't shot anything up to this point other than small game with shotguns. But at 18, I got a bear whitetail too, a compound bow, and I joined a local archery club.
Nice.
And within a few months there, I just was introduced to a bunch of traditional guys and ended up really connecting with a guy that was 4 years younger than me. So it was like 14, 15. And we just started shooting together. We'd end up like sleeping at this club and just spending I quit my job and just we would eat candy for dinner out of the little bar fridge thing there. And yeah, we just shot all the time. We would shoot the 3D course. We would go out and do aerial shooting practice, and then we ended up doing a pheasant hunt back like around that time.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. So it was a Howitt Hunter, 60-pound Howitt Hunter, Damon Howitt Hunter, that I was hunting with at that time, and again, like didn't shoot anything and didn't actually get my first deer till I was 29, but just having a lot of fun chasing deer and learning a lot and getting close to animals.
Yeah.
And my first kill ended up being a bear with one of those little primitive crossbows or basic crossbows. I shot a bear when I was 21 with this guy, Darren, and just fell in love with bear hunting. So the following year, I got basically stopped shooting the crossbow and got rid of the compound and bought a 70-something pound longbow. And you might know Don Jackson, being from that area.
Yeah.
So in Lindsay there.
Yeah.
So I bought the 70-pound longbow off of him, or 72, I think it was, and shot my next bear with that. And funny thing was, we were baiting up around Carnarvon, so Northview there, up 35, and went in, and I forgot my tab, or I lost my tab on the way into the stand. So I get up there, and a bear comes in, and I shoot, and I got to like probably half draw, and the arrows or the string slipped out, shot under. I wasn't sure, so I got down. I walk over to where the arrow was, pull it out. Sure enough, no blood or anything. So I get back up in the stand, and then half an hour later, another bear came in. I shot that, passed through, and that was just, I just love that feeling of shooting something with the traditional equipment.
Just more connected, right?
Yeah, it's like I always hunt close, no matter what weapon I have, and I did even back then. But yeah, just the practice with the traditional archery equipment, and then actually applying it to the hunting situation and taking a big game animal was a big deal. So then the following year, that same guy, Darren, and I, we got a tag up where my cabin was that I had built back then. And on the first day, we were just out scouting, and we ended up, I called in a bull moose as we were walking through the woods, and we both shot it at about 10 to 15 yards.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was amazing. 39-inch bull, so not massive, but to us at the time. And we were back in the bush and canoeing, and taking it back to this cabin that I built, which is a cool experience. Yeah,
it's super awesome.
And of course, when you're that young, you think you have a lifetime of that stuff ahead of you, and then it was like 20 years before I shot another moose like that. So, but that was so much fun. So then so I was developing target panic. That bow was just way too heavy, that 70 plus longbow. So I ended up going back to Don Jackson, and he made me a 52-pound hybrid, which is me shooting in the videos over the last several years. Yep. And just love that bow. And then again, just to get a little bit lighter to really eliminate the target panic, I got a 45-pound recurve from him, which is the bow that I ended up shooting my first buck with from the ground.
Oh, nice.
And now my wife's shooting that bow, which is really cool.
Yeah, 45 pounds is like a really good medium, like in the intermediate weight. I think it's perfect for developing form and that too, right? So
it's funny, back then, like a 45-pound bow was unheard of. Like everybody shot 60 plus for hunting.
Yeah,
that's why 70 pounds for the longbow didn't seem like a stretch. It was like, okay, I'm a pretty strong guy. I can handle that. I should be shooting that. So I did for a while. But anyway, you learn.
What, so you've obviously taken quite a few nice animals with the gear you've gotten over the years. Now, what was the deciding factor to getting into more of your modern stuff? Your videos in that now too. Like, what made you decide to make the jump into homesteading again? And obviously, you said you have built a cabin before, so you have had the experience. But what was the trigger in your mind that made you say, "Let's do this and let's document it too"?
Yeah, well, yeah. That came after the fact, the idea to document it. But basically, I read Walden back in when I was a teenager, and decided that's the life I wanted to live. So actually, with my parents' help, and some money that I made in construction in the summer, bought a property on an island 2 and a half hours north of where I lived when I was 17. So I built a little just stick frame cabin on that island. And then I put a bear bait out on mainland near there and just really got into that and wanted to live like that. But being an island, it was difficult to access. So I sold that and bought a mainland property on the same lake, 5.5 acres.
Nice.
And built a cabin there. So that would be 21 by the time I built that, I guess, and actually moved into it briefly. And then realized, you actually have to have some income to even pay the property taxes. So I came out of the bush and got a job, and then met a woman and got married and had kids. So that kind of took me away from that for a while.
Right.
But I made that decision back then, even, that I was never going to choose modern living over more of a traditional life, and wanted to be close to where I wanted, the bush that I wanted to be in. So
right.
We moved, my wife and I moved like 2 hours north of where we met and where I grew up, just so I could be closer to the forest rather than to work.
Oh, that's awesome.
So small town. We raised our kids in a little village of 900 people, but it was right on the edge of civilization, basically. So I was able to walk out the door with my bow and go and hunt the local woods, and did quite well there. So I always did that. But as we were raising the kids, I decided I'm going to be, get into business. So I started a commercial roofing company, and we were doing pretty well. I ended up getting up to 90 something employees. Just all of my time and energy and my wife's were going into that, other, raising the kids.
Yeah.
So that was taking me away from the outdoors. And when the 2008 financial crisis hit the States and, really came into to Canada in 2010, a lot of my customers went out of business and left me holding the bag.
Right.
Because I was, aggressively building this business, I had guaranteed all the business debt, which left me personally $750,000 in debt. So it was like devastating. So
yeah, no kidding.
My wife and I decided we were going to prioritize family and food, really like healthy living, and just cut our living expenses back to as little as possible. And we actually bought a small herd of Dexter cattle, started raising our own cattle. Yeah. And
nice. That's awesome.
Pigs, chickens, 100 meat chickens, and a whole bunch of laying hens. And pulled up all the sod in the backyard of our little half-acre suburban lot and planted it all with fruits and vegetables. And just, I started hunting again, more than I was, and really haven't turned back. So that would be 2011 we started that. And during that time, I had started another business, or I ramped up a business that I had started during that time, and was able to pay off that debt and then sell that business.
Oh, nice. Good for you.
Yeah. So it got us out of debt, and it got us into a position where I could take a couple of years to decide what I want to do with my life, and just decide I don't care about money anymore. Like, I realized at that age, it's just, I need to get back to my roots. I need to do what I really love to do. My family was supportive, and just dove head first into just doing all the outdoor stuff and documenting, not even know what I was going to do. Like, I had no idea how to monetize it at that point, but I thought I knew about branding because we had these businesses.
Yeah.
I thought I got to create a brand, and I'm just going to do what I love to do. And let's see what happens with that, and see how to monetize that in the future. So
it's so crazy how those things start out. Eh? Just like what you think is a crisis at the time somehow leads to something better. Like, it's just amazing.
Well, I get comments all the time recently, like since the pandemic started, that, as if you saw this coming. Well, I did, because 2010 had such an impact on our life. And I knew that, pursuing the mighty dollar and that lifestyle and everything was just the wrong path. So we were able to crack that. And by the time this latest crisis came around, we were just so set up for it and didn't miss a beat.
Well, I'm sure you're really creating, there's a lot of content of people doing something like that, but I think you're like really creating a modern blueprint for people to get inspired, if anything, or even take action on it, which is awesome.
Well, I think to me, the bigger, like the most inspirational part, I guess, of that story is that I don't have an outdoor background. Like, I wasn't raised to be a hunter or fisherman by my parents, and didn't really have a mentor. And I really was a middle-class suburban knight, basically. And make that transition is possible, which, that's the majority of people that would be watching this kind of thing or listening to this are in that position and think that it's outside of their possibilities or their experience or their skill level. And I'm just a regular guy that was just living this suburban life and was able to make this transition and do it successfully. So it's all just hard work.
You feel that once you made the decision in your mind, everything kind of unfolded from there? Is that really the ultimate thing that people should really realize? It's just the decision to do it, and then everything else will kind of...
It's a decision to do it, but it's the commitment to like I said, it was probably more than 2 years after I started the channel before I knew you could monetize YouTube videos. Like, I literally didn't know that was the thing. I was just putting them up because I was having fun at it, but I was really just documenting canoe trips and thought I'll throw this up just for entertainment purposes. And then somebody, they started to become popular, and this one particular guy said, you should be monetizing this. But I think the point is that it was every single day, and every single day since that, the day that I decided to document my life, there's not a day that I don't film and that I don't work hard. So you have to, even when there's no obvious path to any kind of reward for that effort, that you need to do it regardless. So that's why you need to be passionate about it and to commit almost your entire life to whatever that thing is. And for me, it's been getting back to simpler times and hard work and responsibility, taking responsibility, not relying on society or government programs or anything else. It's just a matter of getting on that path, but every single day making sure I'm taking another step down that path.
Yeah, it's amazing. Now, what you're doing now, excuse me, you're really your newer content, you're really fleshing out a newer type of homestead. Are you planning to bring into the livestock into that? Or how much would you say like foraging and hunting would play into actually your daily calories and acquiring that?
Part of yeah. I mean, I guess the bottom line is that I know enough homesteaders that raise animals, and my experience with raising animals in the past is that they really become an anchor. Like that becomes that you're either doing that or you're living a little bit more adventurous lifestyle, because all the farmers that I know and homesteaders that I know that raise livestock, they don't leave the house. I mean, especially if you're in a remote area like I am, it's not like I'm going to have somebody drop by to feed the cattle or the chickens or whatever. So it's, I'm attracted to doing that still, but feasible. I just don't think it's feasible for us to incorporate that, especially with the type of land that I have. It's just not agricultural or suited for even pasture. So bottom line is that I did sort of set a challenge last year to see if I could acquire 3 million calories from what I've grown and harvested. And I got pretty close to that, but ended up cheating because my sister moved and had a couple of Dexter cattle, steers that she had to get rid of. So I bought those and put them in the freezer. But I knew I could come pretty close. Like so far, I've put 70,000 calories in the pantry just in maple sugar this season. I've probably got 20,000 calories in fish, and I know I could easily harvest legally and store legally about 200,000 calories from fish.
Right.
And 3 million calories just is family of four essentially. Even though the kids aren't around anymore, I still factor in feeding them because I'm a father. So like I burn over 1 million calories myself per year. So a deer, typical doe up in our area, yields about 60 to 70,000 calories. If I get a buck, it could be as much as double that. A bear could get well over 100,000 calories from a bear, especially with the fat, which I utilize completely.
Right.
I can get a moose tag, which is almost impossible in our area, despite the fact that I'm practically run over by moose every day at the cabin. If I travel to Newfoundland or somewhere else to get a moose, that goes a long way towards that goal. Small game, and then what I grow and forage. We forage for mushrooms and other like cattails and things like that. And then I've got about a half an acre cleared that I'm growing annual vegetables in, and then the perimeter of all the open areas that are filled with hazelnut shrubs, berries of all sorts, and vines and all kinds of stuff. Things to increase the wildlife population, but also to provide food for ourselves.
Yeah,
so that's cool. Live off the land rather than I'm not going to farm. I'm not going to be a livestock producer.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you got tons of stuff, obviously, that hunts. I mean, the Algonquin area is just abundance of game. Well, for lack of better words, abundance of game. But what would you say is your favorite game to hunt? What's your favorite type of species? Small, big? What do you lean into more? Obviously, you said bear. Is that kind of a?
Yeah, it's kind of like I'm really drawn to the Canadian Shield. Like I grew up south of the Canadian Shield, but my first property was up here, and
right.
That's the landscape I'm most comfortable in. I love the bedrock outcroppings, and the amount of water, beaver ponds and rivers and streams and lakes. Like just there's so much interest here. But it's dense forest, so it's not like you go out west and you can see game. Like I've seen probably one bear just walking around in the woods, like not hunting, like doing anything. You just don't run into them.
Yeah,
but it's my favorite animal, I would say, to actually hunt. So I've shot maybe a dozen of them and had opportunities for many more than that. So that's exciting, but it's the game that is here. Moose. I've shot 4 moose. I love moose hunting. I love calling them. I like photographing and filming them. Just such an amazing big animal. Very impressive.
You're making all the people in the States jealous.
Yeah. Well, they've got the deer, right? And they can shoot multiple deer. We had one season here, maybe 2 seasons south of here where I used to live, where we raised our family, where we had, you could buy extra tags over the counter, and I shot 6 deer that year.
Oh, nice.
But typically, as you know, in Ontario, it's 1 deer per guy, and you have to like apply this to get a doe tag. And the only reason you would do that is because it's so difficult to see deer, never mind shoot one, that being limited to bucks only makes it that much more challenging.
Right.
But I do love deer hunting, of course, but it's just not, I got identified 12 different deer on my property last year, which is really high for the area. And I think it's only because they concentrated at my property because it was such a poor mast year.
Right.
But typically I'd be lucky to see 6 different deer in my area. So that's when moose and bear are less dense, but they can be more visible if you attract them.
Well, I was going to ask, because we're on the topic, and of course, because it's bush stories, what is the one hunt or hunts that either went really well or really bad? What's the story in your mind that you just would always talk around the campfire, or you just will never forget it, or stories?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's almost like per species what's been the most exciting thing. I think that moose hunt has to be way up there. Like my buddy and I going totally inexperienced and be able to call that bull in and shoot that and break it down, and take it out of the woods. Like I think we got back to my cabin at 2 a.m. with half of the moose. I had this little old sports pal canoe that was weighed down to like an inch above the water with that moose carcass, and then I had to take it over a ridge and then put in a boat and boat it down the lake and get it back to the cabin. So that was challenging, but we came back the next morning to get the rest of the moose, and a wolf pack had found it.
Oh no.
Yeah, they hadn't they got on the carcass, but they didn't find the quarters because we had set those aside in a different spot. Yeah. But that one of the wolves came right past my buddy, and he actually took a shot at it, and then it came down to where I was because we knew that there's likely predators on the carcass. And then as I'm like creeping through in the lowland, approaching the carcass, this wolf comes down and stops maybe 5 feet from me, but on the other side of a conifer. So I didn't have a shot at it, but then it turned and when it did smell me or see me, and turned and repassed him again. So that was really exciting. And then we got those quarters out, came back the following day again, thinking, well, maybe we'll get on a bear or something. We literally couldn't find even specks of blood left from the site that had been cleaned up that well.
That's crazy.
Something had dragged the head off because we had cut the antlers off. And obviously it was wolves, and we figure a bear must have taken that. Yeah, that's how wild the area is. And it's, I just love that.
Nothing left behind.
Yeah, very cool. And so that area, I spent lots of times on my own hunting back in there and having so many encounters with wolves. I kind of felt like a spirit animal because almost every time I was out, I'd have these wolves around me. And I was doing howls with them if I camped out there alone or with my dog out there.
That's cool.
Yeah. Had one stalk me because I was moose hunting. I was just walking through, calling as I was walking through this dense bush, and this wolf started coming, circling, and kept getting closer and closer. Couldn't get my scent, full camouflage and face paint and everything, and never did figure out what I was. Came within 15 yards, front legs up on a stump looking at me, and I took a shot at it and it just went like this, like just out of the way of the arrow, and just sat there looking at me. Never did figure out what I was, and then finally trotted off eventually. So
maybe it was a spirit animal.
Yeah. So it's just very cool. And then the following year, we were paddling down that river where I had that encounter, and it was all misty. It was late September, and wolf was like on the edge of the water, just drinking out of the water with the mist all rising around. It was just so cool looking.
Just those mystical moments.
Yeah. So that would be moose and wolf encounters. I think the bear. Well, I've shot some bear from the ground. I had a bear sniff while I was sitting in a blind over bait. I decided I was going to hunt on the ground that year. A tree stand above me, but I'm at that base of the tree with a little bit of branches around me. And the bear comes in from behind me, of course, comes right up, sticks his head in the opening that I had for shooting, and touched the end of my arrow as I'm sitting there. And then I just wandered away, took off, and I got back up in the tree and shot a different one later that night.
A little bit of a heart pounding moment.
Yeah, but you get so used to being around animals, so I've never felt threatened, and I didn't feel threatened at that time. I was just so excited about the experience to be that close to an animal. So cool.
Awesome.
And then as far as deer are concerned, I've had 2 encounters where I've touched a deer with my arrow on the bow, which I thought was, again, really cool. Like that's more exciting than actually shooting them.
That's amazing.
Yeah, just in this one spot, the deer move in there in the winter if we got an early winter, and there'd be enough that I could have a lot of encounters. So, and I'm a still hunter mostly. I just walk around typically and get up against a tree and have these deer filter by me. That season that I had multiple tags, I actually shot a doe. She's probably 8 yards, little creek bottom. She comes walking past my chute, pass through. Has no idea she was shot. She just did that little jerk when the arrow went through her. She's looking around and just fell over right in front of me. And I didn't know there was a buck trailing her, a young buck, like a 2-year-old, trailing her, and comes walking right up to her. And I shot him too. I passed through, but he ran like 100 yards full speed. But that was a fun experience.
That's super lucky.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So you got tons of experience. I mean, you're talking before about how you got started. If you had the opportunity to go back and be your own coach, what advice would you give yourself to how your approach to hunting or your shooting? What kind of things would you think you would be able to teach yourself to do differently, or how would you go about it?
Things are different now. I mean, I hadn't been following archery or bow hunting media very much. When you're creating content in the volume that I do, it's not a lot of time to consume other people's content. But fairly recently, I started listening to some of the archery podcasts and watching some of the content and the sort of innovations in form or more awareness of proper form and things like that. I'm paying more attention to now. So like all the guys our age or my age are saying now, these little injuries that probably could be prevented with better form back then, and lighter poundage bows. We could have done things better, I think, that way. I mean, I've always had shoulder impingements. It's actually prevented me from doing things in the past, working out even as a teenager and throughout my life. So I'm surprised that I'm not feeling much pain with the shooting that I'm doing now. So I'm fortunate that way, but I know it still could catch up to me. I'm 52 now, and I'm obviously only going to get older and less able to perform these heavier duties. But I don't know, maybe that's the main thing. I think probably when you're younger, you assume you're going to have so much opportunity in your life and that you can postpone things. And I know at this age, like I said, that moose scenario I thought was going to be an annual event, and it like has never happened that way again. Right. So you really have to appreciate all of the opportunities you have, but make them happen. Like you need to make things happen. So there's hunts that I would have liked to elk hunt when I was younger in the mountains out west. Many hunts like that I would have liked to go on, but like before I had kids, or I don't know, maybe now, but I'm just not feeling the same way now. Really, family's still important, and I've got what looks like a very selfish lifestyle, the amount of time I spend in the outdoors, but I have to balance that with family still, and I'm not willing to sacrifice weeks at a time to go out on an Alaskan hunt or
right
an Alberta hunt or something.
No, I understand. I'm in the same position, obviously, with business and family and just balancing time. And yeah, it's totally relatable. It's just, you always want to do the things you fantasize about. It's just, the reality of family and everything kind of like grounds you a bit too, right?
Yeah. And you also have to appreciate what you have in front of you. And like you said, a lot of Americans envious about the moose opportunities and bear hunting opportunities that I have, or we have here. And so I want elk hunt because we don't really have elk. I actually got drawn for a cow tag just north of you a couple of years ago, but ended up being nothing in the area that we could find during the season. So that didn't really turn out. But because it's just one of those animals we don't have access to, it's one of the ones I wanted to hunt, of course.
Yeah, well, the grass is always greener on the other side, right?
Well, that's it. And then I walk out my door, or I wake up in the morning and I've got trail camera pictures of the moose licking the logs on the front porch of my cabin. Crazy. But I want to travel somewhere else to see wildlife.
Yeah.
Bears, same thing. Lots of bears. I got decent bucks on the property this year and last year. I've got fishers right now. They're getting a bit of a nuisance, crawling all over the cabin and defecating literally on my front door, at the front door, tearing things apart. But yeah, I just love all that stuff.
Well, it literally is a dream for probably tons of people to be able to get into that position. So it's like you said, right? Just to kind of be grateful for what you do have, and just to kind of, sometimes you got to take a step back and realize it. Sometimes it's difficult to realize it when you're in the motions of it, and it's just having the discipline to actually recognize it. Yeah.
And you have to do it when you have the opportunity. Like I mentioned earlier, I did 3 winter caribou hunts in northern Quebec, 24-hour drive and 3-day hunt. I ended up shooting 5 caribou. That's gone now. Like that's not a thing anymore, because the population's plummeted not long after that. So if I didn't do that at that time, it's something I would never experience. And that's something that was memorable too, especially the first year we went. They were just coming through right at the right time. It was just streams of like cattle coming by. And that was so exciting, stalking them and calling them, like learning how to call them with my mouth. It was really fun. It was just unbelievable. Deep snow, like you're snowshoeing, and like I said, sneaking up on these things in the snow or having them filtered by you. Just so much fun.
That's amazing.
But again, it's just not a thing that exists anymore. Probably won't in my lifetime. So I'm glad I did it when I could.
Well, that's a lesson. Whoever's listening or watching, take action on what you want to do, and just take action. Like you said, make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Don't let it be a wish that you wishfully did. It's just make it happen. Have it be the memory rather than be the desire.
Yeah. And it is a sacrifice, right? It's time sacrifice, financial sacrifice, but I don't know. It seems that you end up with the same amount of money, whether you did something or you didn't, because you find other places to waste it. So maybe you should just do that hunt that you can't afford, because you're going to find other things that you can't afford throughout your life, and you're still going to wish you had done them.
I love that. That's awesome. Shawn, it's been such a privilege. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to do this. Obviously, like you said, you're really committed to making your videos and the lifestyle you're living. It's, as much as it's relaxing, it's also probably demanding to kind of do the production stuff too. So again, I really do appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And before we sign off, obviously, for those for those who don't know where to find you, where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, well, my Self Reliance everywhere, basically. YouTube is the largest platform. I do post on Facebook and Instagram, although less lately. I'm kind of getting away from those platforms for probably political reasons, partially. But
yeah.
So on Rumble, I'm starting to upload everything on Rumble as well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I do have a Patreon account. I have quite a few patrons that go there for more frequent content and some more behind the scenes content where I'm posting things that probably wouldn't be successful or wouldn't be acceptable, I would say, on YouTube. We're not people in our industry are not really favored by some of these mainstream media platforms.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
So yeah, I would say Rumble is probably the future.
Nice.
Patreon if you want to see more content, and YouTube if you just want to keep up to date on what I'm doing now.
And I did happen to see, I'm going to throw this in there, that you've got your own line of chaga. For those who don't know what chaga is, I highly suggest you look into it. Shawn's got it, and it's maybe one of the most powerful medicines, I would say, that you could possibly drink. I highly recommend. I drink it all the time too, and I just figured I'd just throw that out there too, because I think people should be made aware of it, because it's maybe contributing to the shoulders not being inflamed too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it lowers blood pressure too. There's several reasons I take that, and some other natural supplements and things that we forage, nettle, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, I don't know. We're just the beginning of this journey, and the things that I have planned for the future of our homestead, but also therefore the channel is just exciting to me. I feel like I have barely scratched the surface.
Well, congratulations on everything you have done. I mean, it's pretty epic. It's super cool. I think it's inspiring a lot of people to take action and hopefully try to do something similar, or at least, if anything, get out there, like you said, and not have so much dependence on the system that's been designed to, arguably keep them contained, right? Keep them confined.
Yeah, that's right.
I love it. Shawn, I really appreciate everything. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a great afternoon.
Great. You too. Thank you.